The villa was never just a house. It was a living thing breathing through its windows, sighing through its corridors, whispering in its garden when the wind brushed the fig tree leaves. I had lived within its walls for 42 years. My husband and I built every inch of it together, brick by careful brick, dream by patient dream. Every crack in the plaster had a story. Every faded tile had been kissed by the soles of my daughter's small feet. Anya was born in the east bedroom, the one that caught the morning light first. She used to call it the sunshine room. As a little girl, she would spend hours running barefoot through the hallways, her laughter echoing off the walls like music. I remember how she'd hide behind the curtains and jump out to startle her father, who would pretend to faint dramatically every time. Back then, the villa was filled with laughter, with the smell of coffee and cinnamon bread, and with the kind of warmth that only family can create. But warmth cools quietly, almost politely. I never saw when love began to turn brittle between us. After my husband died, the villa grew quieter. The laughter stopped. The fig tree still bloomed, the same way memories sometimes do when you least expect them. But my daughter's visits became fewer. At first she came every weekend, then only on holidays, then when she could. Her voice on the phone was polite but rushed, filled with the background noise of a life that no longer included me. When she introduced me to her husband, Mikhail, I tried to love him as if he were my own son. I smiled. I cooked his favorite dishes. I asked him about his work. He was charming, too charming, in the way people are when they are used to winning everyone over. There was something in his eyes, though, a calculating sharpness that made me uneasy. Still, I told myself not to judge. Anya seemed happy, or at least she said she was. And isn't that all a mother wants to believe? For a while I pretended not to notice how Mikhail's family slowly crept into our lives. His mother, a woman with a gaze as cold as polished marble, began visiting the villa more often than Anya did. She criticized everything: the curtains, the old photographs, the furniture that had belonged to my parents. She smiled only when I flinched. I learned quickly to offer tea with a steady hand. Then came the small changes. Anya asked me once if I had ever thought of moving somewhere simpler. She said it gently, like a daughter making a loving suggestion, but I could hear the script in her tone, someone else's words spilling from her mouth. I laughed it off, told her that this house was my home, and she said nothing more that day, but a seed had been planted. Weeks later, I noticed strangers walking around the property. A man in a suit measured the living room walls. Another took photographs of the courtyard. When I asked who they were, Anya brushed it off. "Just checking some property details, Mama. You don't need to worry." I wanted to believe her. Oh, how I wanted to believe her. And then came the letter. It arrived on a mild Tuesday morning, tucked beneath a pile of bills. At first, I didn't recognize the envelope, formal, official, heavy with that bureaucratic smell of ink and authority. My eyes fell on the words printed in black across the top: asterisk asterisk transfer of property ownership. Asterisk asterisk, my hands trembled as I unfolded the papers. Each line was a slow knife. The villa, my life's work, the place where my memories slept, had been transferred to asterisk, her husband's family asterisk. My daughter's signature was there, clear and decisive. Anya Petrov. For a long moment I couldn't breathe. The house seemed to hold its own breath with me. The walls were silent. Even the wind outside had stopped. I called her, my heart hammering, but she didn't answer. Hours later, she appeared at the door, her eyes wide and defensive. "Mama," she said quickly before I could speak, "this is for the best. You're getting older. You can stay with me and Mikhail for a while. They'll take care of the villa. It's theirs now." I stared at her. "Theirs?" She nodded, not meeting my eyes. "Yes, I've already arranged it. You can't come here anymore. It'll confuse things." The words fell like stones between us. Asterisk, you can't come here anymore. Asterisk, I should have shouted. I should have begged, demanded, cursed, anything. But instead, something inside me went very still, like a lake when the wind dies down. I felt the pain, but it was so vast, so heavy, that it numbed me completely. So I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile, nor a broken one. It was the kind of smile that belongs to someone who has understood too much, too late. I see, I said quietly. This is theirs now. You've decided. Anya blinked, uncertain. Mama, please don't make this harder. I won't, I whispered. Don't worry. I won't make this harder for anyone. When she left, the house felt like a body that had been hollowed out. I walked through the rooms one last time, the dining hall where we had celebrated birthdays, the kitchen where Anya had learned to bake her first bread, the small garden where my husband had planted marigolds for me each spring. Everything shimmered with memory. That night, I packed a single suitcase and left quietly, just as she wanted. But before I stepped out, I turned and looked at the villa bathed in moonlight. My hand rested on the cold doorknob. This is theirs now, I murmured to the empty rooms, but they will never truly own it, because something inside me had already begun to stir, a quiet, deliberate storm. I had no plan yet, only a feeling, a whisper that told me, wait, watch, prepare. They believed they had stolen my home. But they had forgotten one thing: the house had always listened to me. Every secret, every heartbeat, every echo. And soon it would help me tell my final story. The betrayal was complete, but the reckoning had only just begun. For weeks after I left the villa, my life became unbearably quiet. I stayed in a small apartment near the river, a place too new to carry any ghosts, too bland to have a soul. The walls were white, the air smelled of paint and loneliness, and the sound of the river outside was my only companion. Every night I dreamt of the house, of its long corridors and creaking floors, of sunlight spilling through the curtains, of my husband's laughter echoing faintly in the garden. Each morning I would wake with that ache in my chest, the one that comes from losing something alive. A home isn't just wood and brick, it's a pulse, and mine had been stolen, but grief, I discovered, can be a very patient teacher. It teaches you the value of silence, it teaches you the language of observation, and most importantly, it teaches you how to plan. In the beginning, my plans weren't about revenge, they were about understanding. I wanted to know how it happened, how my daughter had been convinced to give away something that was never hers to surrender. I began with the papers. I still had a copy of the old documents, the original deed, my husband's will, and the small stack of legal files we had signed decades ago. I took them out one night, spread them across my kitchen table, and started reading, line by line, clause by clause. My husband had always said I had a stubborn mind. You'd make a good lawyer. He used to tease. He wasn't wrong. Hours passed. Coffee went cold. And then I found it, a single line buried deep in the documents. It was a clause written by my husband's lawyer at my insistence many years ago, one I had almost forgotten. Asterisk, the original owner reserves the right of habitation for life, and no transfer of ownership shall be valid without written consent. Asterisk, I read it 3 times to be sure. My hands trembled not with anger, but with the slow rising warmth of vindication. They hadn't noticed this clause. They had made their little plans, forged their signatures, and congratulated themselves, but they had missed this one silent guardian. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled. So I whispered to the papers, "You are still mine." That discovery changed everything. My grief hardened into purpose. My tears dried into resolve. The next morning I visited the bank where my husband and I had once held our accounts. The manager was new, but the records were old, and old records never lie. I requested copies of the villa's transaction logs, and there it was again, the fraudulent transfer, filed in haste, missing my written approval. An illegal transaction wrapped in confidence. That day, I didn't feel like a broken mother anymore. I felt like the keeper of a secret they didn't yet know could destroy them. But still, I waited. I wanted to know why asterisk? Why would my daughter, the same child who once cried if I forgot to kiss her good night, do this? What kind of grip did Mikhail's family have on her? I began to visit people quietly. My husband's old lawyer, now gray-haired and slow in speech, agreed to meet me in a small cafe. Over tea, he listened as I told him everything. When I finished, he sighed and said, "You're not the first woman they've done this to. Mikhail's mother has a talent for manipulation. She convinces everyone it's for family stability." Family stability? What an elegant phrase for theft. I left the cafe knowing what I had to do. My revenge wouldn't be loud or violent. It would be artful. It would sting the way truth stings, with elegance, precision, and permanence. I started to collect my pieces like a chess player arranging her board. First, I reconnected with old friends. Etta, my neighbor who had lived across from the villa for 30 years, and Mr. Sokol, the carpenter who had built our garden benches. They loved that house almost as much as I did. Quietly, I told them I might need their help soon, not for confrontation, but for witnessing. They didn't ask questions. They simply nodded. Loyalty doesn't need explanations. Then I contacted the Community Foundation, a local charity that provided shelter to widows and single mothers. The director, a gentle young woman named Irina, agreed to meet. I told her I was thinking of leaving my home to the foundation in my will. I didn't tell her the rest of the story. Not yet. Her eyes sparkled with gratitude anyway. "That villa has a soul," she said. "It could change lives." "Yes," I replied softly. "That's exactly what I want it to do." At night, I wrote letters. Not to anyone in particular, just to my daughter. Letters I would never send. Letters where I told her about the ache of betrayal, the weight of silence, the echo of rooms stripped of laughter. I poured everything into those pages until my hands cramped, and each time I finished, I folded the paper carefully and placed it in a box. Someday, I thought, she might find them, and when she did, she would understand. But words weren't enough. I needed action, quiet, strategic, irreversible action. I hired my husband's lawyer again and asked him to prepare a set of documents. "I want the ownership issue clarified," I told him, "legally, publicly, and permanently, but not yet. I'll tell you when." He frowned. "Are you sure you don't want to act now?" I smiled faintly. "No, not yet. They still think they've won. Let them decorate the villa. Let them believe they own it. When they move in, I'll be there to welcome them properly." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "You're your husband's wife, that's for sure." Days turned into weeks. I began to prepare the house itself for the performance that was to come. I visited when no one was around. The gate still opened for me because no one had thought to change the code. I walked through the rooms quietly, polishing, cleaning, restoring. The air was thick with memories, but there was no sadness anymore, only focus. I placed fresh flowers in vases. I polished the old mirror in the hallway. I even baked the apricot jam that Mikhail's family had once mocked as peasant food. Every detail mattered. The stage had to be perfect, because when they arrived, when they came with their boxes, their smug smiles, their self-satisfaction, I wanted them to feel comfortable, safe, victorious, and then, only then, would I pull back the curtain and show them the truth. As I left the villa that last evening before their arrival, I stood at the gate for a long time, watching the sun sink behind the hills. The house glowed in the fading light, every window reflecting gold. "This will be the last time they walk in as owners," I whispered. "The next time they will walk out humbled." The wind stirred through the fig tree, as if the house itself had heard and approved. My heart was calm, the pieces were set. They had taken everything, but I still had the one thing they could never possess: patience. And with patience, even the deepest betrayal can be turned into the sweetest revenge. The morning they came to claim their new home, dawned strangely beautiful, the kind of morning that carried an almost deliberate calm, as though nature itself were holding its breath. The sky was soft gold, the fig tree shimmered in the gentle light, and a cool breeze played through the garden. I stood by the gate in a pale blue dress, my hair pinned neatly, a tray of tea and apricot jam waiting on the terrace table. Anyone passing by would have thought I was preparing to welcome guests. In a way, I was. Their car appeared at the turn in the road, sleek, dark, polished, and loud in its self-importance. Behind it came a small moving truck, its sides plastered with the company's name in bold red letters. I watched them park, the dust swirling around their tires like stage smoke before a performance. When Anya stepped out, she looked radiant, not in the innocent way I remembered, but in the proud, self-assured way of someone trying too hard to convince herself she belonged. She wore a cream dress, her hair perfectly styled, her posture stiff. Mikhail followed, phone in hand, barking instructions to the movers. Behind them came his mother, dressed head to toe in black, clutching a handbag that probably cost more than my monthly pension. "Mama," Anya greeted carefully, almost uncertainly. "You're here early." I smiled, the kind of smile that could mean anything. "Of course I am, darling. I wanted to welcome you properly." I could see the confusion flicker in her eyes. Mikhail, on the other hand, didn't bother to hide his irritation. "That won't be necessary," he said, waving his hand toward the movers. "We'll handle everything from here." "Oh, but I insist," I replied, my tone warm, almost tender. "Hospitality doesn't vanish just because the deed changes hands." For a moment he looked at me as though trying to gauge whether I was being sarcastic or sincere. I kept my face serene, my smile perfectly polite. He shrugged, turning away. "Fine, just don't get in the way." The movers began unloading boxes, filling the courtyard with chaos. I could hear Mikhail's mother ordering them about, her voice slicing through the air like a dull blade. "Careful with that box. That's crystal. Put the sofa in the east room. No, not that one, the big one." Anya followed them around, her voice timid, trying to mediate. I could see her nerves fraying with every passing minute. When they stepped into the house, they stopped short. The air inside was fresh, floral, alive. I had spent the previous night cleaning every corner until the floors gleamed like glass. The smell of lemon polish and roses hung in the air. The table in the dining room was set with tea, porcelain cups, and a plate of cookies. "What is this?" Mikhail's mother asked, wrinkling her nose. "Did you prepare all this?" "I did," I said softly. "I wanted you to feel welcome." Anya looked around, clearly torn between gratitude and discomfort. "It's lovely, Mama. Thank you, my dear." I turned to the others. "Please sit. I thought we could have tea together, a small toast to new beginnings." Mikhail started to object, but his mother, perhaps flattered by the gesture, nodded curtly and sat. "Tea," she said, "is never a bad idea." I poured for them, steady and graceful. Years of being underestimated had taught me how to move without betraying intent. As they sipped, I let the silence stretch just long enough to make them uneasy. Finally I spoke. It must feel good. I said, to move into a place with so much history. Mikhail smiled thinly. "Yes, it's a fine property. We'll take good care of it." "I'm sure you will," I replied, my tone carrying a whisper of something unreadable. Though care, as I've learned, comes in many forms. Anya set her cup down gently. "Mama, please let's not do this now." "Do what?" I asked sweetly. "Talk. Celebrate. You're right. Perhaps I should let someone else speak." At that exact moment, the sound of a car door closing echoed from outside. All heads turned toward the open veranda. A figure appeared. My husband's old lawyer, briefcase in hand, expression calm but purposeful. Behind him came my neighbor Etta, and two men from the community foundation, carrying folders. Anya's face paled. "Mama, what is this?" I smiled, serene as a saint, just a little formality. You see, before I let go of this house entirely, I wanted to ensure everything was in perfect order. Mikhail shot to his feet. "We already have the deed. There's nothing left to ensure." "Ah," the lawyer said mildly, opening his briefcase. That's where things become interesting. He placed a folder on the table and looked directly at Mikhail. According to the original contract signed by both Mr. and Mrs. Petrov, any transfer of ownership without written consent from the surviving spouse is legally void. In other words, Mr. Petrov's widow still holds full residential and controlling rights to this property. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. "What nonsense!" Mikhail's mother snapped. The property papers were signed, notarized. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "Forged. I've verified the signatures with the registrar's office. They don't match. Whoever filed the transfer was creative, but not careful." Mikhail's jaw clenched. "You're bluffing, am I?" the lawyer asked quietly, "because as of this morning, the court has officially frozen the title transfer pending investigation. You may want to contact your notary." Anya's hand flew to her mouth. "Mama," I looked at her, my gaze soft but steady. "You didn't think I'd hand over my life's work so easily, did you?" Mikhail's mother pushed back from the table. "You have no right to humiliate us like this. On the contrary," I said, my tone still gentle. "I'm not humiliating anyone. I'm simply revealing the truth. And truth, my dear, has its own sense of timing." As if on cue, my neighbor Edda stepped forward and placed an old tape recorder on the table. The air seemed to vibrate with tension. "What is this now?" Mikhail hissed. I pressed play. From the small speaker came Mikhail's voice, calm, arrogant, unmistakable. Asterisk, she's too sentimental to check the papers. Once it's in my name, it's done. Asterisk, then his mother's voice, sharp and cold. Asterisk, good. Get it finished before she realizes what you're doing. The old fool should be in a home anyway. Asterisk, the sound filled the room like poison. Anya went white. "You recorded them," she whispered. I met her eyes. "No, my dear. The gardener did. He overheard them last spring when they thought they were alone. He gave it to me when I left." Mikhail lunged toward the tape recorder, but Edda blocked him with surprising agility. "Careful, young man," she said. "That's evidence." The lawyer closed his briefcase. "I'll be submitting a copy to the court as well." I looked at my daughter. Her face had crumpled not in anger, but in something deeper. Shame, realization. She turned to her husband, but he refused to meet her eyes. "Mama," she whispered, "I didn't know." I placed a hand on her trembling fingers. "I believe you, but knowing and ignoring our cousins, Anya. And you've been their guest for too long." Tears filled her eyes. "What are you going to do?" I smiled, not cruelly, but with the soft satisfaction of someone who has finally set the world right. "Oh, nothing terrible. You see, I've already made other arrangements. This villa will not belong to you, or to them, or even to me for much longer." Mikhail's mother scoffed. "You can't give it away, actually." I said, nodding toward the two men from the Community Foundation, "I can, and I have. As of tomorrow, this house will belong to the Hearth and Haven Foundation. It will serve as a shelter for widows, single mothers, and children in need." Anya gasped. Mikhail's face turned crimson. "You wouldn't dare." I just did asterisk. I interrupted softly. "You see, this villa was built with love, and love isn't meant to be hoarded. You wanted to own it, to cage it, to make it a symbol of power. But love and legacy are meant to be shared." The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was the heavy, echoing silence of defeat. Mikhail's mother stood abruptly, her chair screeching. "Come, Anya," she barked. "We're leaving." But Anya didn't move. She just sat there, her eyes filled with tears, staring at the woman she had once called Mama, and the man she had called husband. "I'll stay," she whispered. Mikhail turned on her. "What?" She didn't look at him. "I'll stay. I need to talk to her." Alone, for a long, tense moment, no one moved. Then Mikhail, red faced and furious, stormed toward the door, his mother hissing curses under her breath as she followed. The sound of the car engine roared to life and then silence again. Anya and I sat there in the dim afternoon light, surrounded by the ghosts of our own making. "Mama," she whispered, voice trembling, "I'm so sorry." I reached out, brushing a tear from her cheek. "I know," I said softly, and that's why you're still my daughter." Outside, the fig tree rustled, its leaves whispering like applause. The house itself seemed to exhale, as if it had been waiting all this time for justice to finally come home. The performance was over, but the healing that would take time. The house was still after they left. Almost reverently so. The air hung thick with everything that had been said and everything that hadn't. I sat with Anya in the quiet dining room, the untouched tea growing cold between us. Sunlight had shifted, pouring gold through the lace curtains, softening the sharp edges of the morning. For the first time in a long time, my daughter looked like the girl I remembered, small, fragile, and lost in a world too big for her heart. Her mascara had bled down her cheeks, her hands trembled in her lap. "Mama," she whispered, "how did it come to this?" There was no accusation in her voice, only exhaustion, the kind that sinks deep into the bones. I didn't answer right away. I stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the fig tree swaying gently in the autumn breeze. The branches were heavy with fruit, and a few had already fallen, soft and overripe on the grass. Things like this, I said at last, don't happen all at once. They start small. A silence, a compromise, a lie told for someone else's comfort. And before you know it, you've drifted so far you can't see where you began. She pressed her palms to her face. I thought I was helping. Mikhail said it was just a technical thing, that it was temporary. He said you'd be proud of me for taking responsibility. Proud. I repeated softly, turning back toward her. My dear, pride isn't born from betrayal. It's born from honesty. Tears slipped between her fingers. I didn't mean to hurt you. I know. I walked closer, my voice gentler now, but you did. She nodded, unable to meet my gaze. I let him make me small. I thought love meant agreeing, even when I knew it was wrong. I thought choosing him was loyalty. I knelt beside her, taking her trembling hands in mine. Loyalty without conscience is slavery, Anya. You gave away what wasn't yours, not just this house, but your voice, your will. That's the worst kind of theft. Her eyes met mine, broken, wide, raw. Can I fix it? I smiled faintly, the kind of smile born not from joy, but from weary forgiveness. You can't undo what's done, but you can rebuild what's left. That's harder. That's where love truly begins again. For a long moment we sat in silence. Outside, I could hear the faint laughter of children playing down the lane. Life, as it always does, went on. The next few days passed in a strange, peaceful rhythm. The villa, my villa, was now legally and irrevocably transferred to the Hearth and Haven Foundation. The papers had been signed in the lawyer's office. That very morning, he'd offered me a look of admiration mixed with disbelief. "You could have kept it," he said. "You had every legal right, I know." I'd replied simply, but what would that prove? I already won, and it was true. Keeping the house would have been triumph. Giving it away was victory. By the end of the week, the transformation had begun. The movers who had once carried in Mikhail's boxes now carried out everything that didn't belong. The imported furniture, the gaudy mirrors, the sterile perfection that had smothered the soul of the home. In their place came simplicity, shelves, books, paint cans, laughter. The house began to hum again, softly, shyly, as though learning to breathe after a long silence. Anya stayed, not as the owner, but as a helper. She cleaned, painted, repaired, cooked for the volunteers. I watched her rediscover humility through her own hands, the way she'd kneel to scrub the floors, the way she smiled shyly at the women. Arriving to find shelter, it was not punishment, it was rebirth. Sometimes I'd catch her sitting beneath the fig tree, staring into nothing. I didn't interrupt. Some grief needs solitude. Mikhail, of course, didn't return. I heard through quiet murmurs that the investigation into the forged documents had spread wider than expected. His business partners had withdrawn. His family was shunned from the community that once bowed to them. The empire of arrogance he'd built collapsed faster than I could have imagined. I didn't celebrate, not outwardly. My revenge was not about ruin, it was about revelation. And revelation, I've learned, is a mirror. It doesn't destroy, it exposes. The villa's first residents arrived a month later, 3 women and 2 small children. They came with fear in their eyes and bags that held the remnants of lives undone by cruelty. When I opened the door to welcome them, I saw myself in their faces, the tremble of starting over, the exhaustion of being betrayed by someone you trusted. This place is yours now. I told them, it has been waiting for you. One of the women, younger than Anya, burst into tears. Are you sure? It's so beautiful. I smiled. Beauty means nothing if it can't offer shelter. Anya helped carry in their belongings, her hands steady now. The children ran through the garden, laughing, chasing each other beneath the fig tree. Their laughter filled the villa again, not as an echo of the past, but as a promise of the future. That night, as dusk deepened and the last rays of sun burned orange through the courtyard, I walked through the house one more time. The scent of freshly baked bread drifted from the kitchen. The walls, my old walls, glowed with life. Anya joined me on veranda, her face tired but peaceful. They're happy, she said softly. Yes, I replied. That's what this place was meant for. She hesitated, then asked, do you forgive me? I turned to her, studying the woman she'd become, not the naive girl who'd betrayed me, but the humbled daughter who'd found her way back. I already have, I said, but forgiveness isn't the end of the road, Anya. It's the bridge. You still have to cross it. She nodded slowly, tears glistening in her eyes. Then I'll keep walking. Weeks turned into months. The villa became a haven for women who needed safety, for children who needed laughter, for stories that needed space to heal. The walls absorbed new voices, new memories. The air smelled of hope, and in time the pain that had once lived in me sharp, raw, relentless, softened into something like grace. I would often sit by the window with my tea, watching the sunlight move across the garden, listening to the house breathe again. I had imagined revenge would taste sweet, but it didn't. It tasted whole. It tasted like peace. One evening, Anya joined me under the fig tree. The stars were beginning to appear, small and shy in the purple dusk. She sat quietly for a long while before speaking. Mama, she said, I've been volunteering at the shelter every day. Irina wants me to help manage it. I smiled. Then perhaps that's where you were meant to be all along. She looked up at the house, her eyes full of wonder, not ownership. It's strange. I thought I wanted to live here. Now I realize I just wanted to belong here. I reached over and took her hand. Now you do. But not as its mistress, as its keeper. She rested her head on my shoulder, just like she used to when she was a little girl. Thank you, Mama, for not giving up on me. I looked up at the house, its windows glowing warmly in the twilight, and felt something inside me settle, a quiet, beautiful certainty. Love, I said softly, isn't about never being betrayed. It's about surviving betrayal without losing the part of yourself that can still forgive. We sat there in silence as the night deepened. The air smelled of earth and sweetness, and the fig trees' branches whispered above us. The house, our house, had finally found its purpose, and so had we. In the end, I didn't just reclaim my home. I reclaimed my peace. I reclaimed my daughter, and I learned the rarest lesson of all, that the sweetest revenge is mercy dressed in patience, and the purest mercy is letting love, at last, come home.